This past year we did 1.3 million in premiums, and no matter how the stock market performs without a financial advisor, here is how you guarantee your income no matter how long you live. Let's get into it. We're going to do the product, the strategy, and then how to implement this. First, the product. We have what are called fixed indexed annuities. Very simply, these are kind of like buying your own pension plan, except there's a couple differences. So that means you are putting money into a vehicle, and that vehicle is going to give you income into perpetuity, meaning whether you live 10 more years or 100 more years, you're going to get that income no matter what. Now, there's a couple things to note here. First is that these vary from company to company and product to product, but one of those things is that some of these annuities have what are called inflation adjustments. This means, for example, if you expect inflation to grow at a 3% rate for the next 100 years, if you would put enough money in to receive $100,000 a year, you can have that number adjust by 3% every single year into perpetuity. So if you started with 100,000, second year you get 103,000, and it would continue to grow by 3% every year. The second thing here, and this is what makes them different from a lot of pension plans, is that you can still keep a death benefit intact while you're taking this income. See, a lot of people do not like to annuitize an annuity, basically because that means if you were taking $100,000 a year in income, and let's say you had put $1.5 million into this annuity. Well, if you passed away after 1 year, there's still $1.4 million that you worked your whole life, you gathered, you put into this annuity, and now it's gone and your heirs don't get any of that money. However, with the fixed index annuity, and if you structure them in a certain way, this is not the case. In fact, you'll have that death benefit intact, and you're not going to have to worry about what happens if I die 1, 2, even 10 years into this annuity, and all of that money I worked so hard for my entire life just disappears, the insurance company keeps it, and, well, my heirs just don't get it. Well, that's a concern that many of these fixed index annuities solve, and you wouldn't have to worry about. Next is that you also would have access to some of this money. Some of this is going to be penalty-free, usually up to 7 to 10% of the money you put in per year, in case you needed to take this money out in case of emergency. Now, I will note, if you are going to access this money and you're planning to take income later, or maybe you already started taking income, well, of course, what's going to happen? The amount of income that you're going to take is going to decrease. Why? Because the amount of money that's in the policy just decreased. So the plan should be to put the money in here, hopefully not necessarily to access it, but to turn on the income at some point and have that continue into perpetuity. Of course, though, even if that is the plan, emergencies do happen and you would have access to be able to take this money out. Not even just that small portion, you could go above that. You would have to pay penalties to go above that point. But the good news is, unlike a pension plan, where once you turn it on, hey, it's going forever, it's set, you can't access that money. That's not going to be the case here with the fixed index annuity if it is structured correctly. And lastly here is that you can delay income until you're ready to take it, even up to 12 plus years. The reason this is a big deal is because a lot of people will get them and want to turn on the money right away. Or for example, they have an old 401k, an old IRA, the money's just kind of been sitting there and they think, yeah, you know, I might be able to use this for an annuity later on, but I'm probably not going to retire for another 10, 15 years, 5 years, and for that reason, this might not make a lot of sense. However, there's annuities that not only are made for this, but are much more beneficial when they are structured this way. Just thinking about this, you can imagine why that makes sense. And that is because the longer that you tell the insurance company that you're going to give them your money, that means they're going to be able to take that money, go out and invest it, earn a rate of return, and then pay you your money when you need it. Since they have the opportunity to do that for an extended period of time, they're going to be able to make better guarantees or a more enticing offer. And that's exactly what they do. For example, if you plan on taking income 10 years from now and you roll over an old 401k into one of these policies, I know one company, for example, that has a 30% bonus on top of the amount of money you put in. So if you put in $1 million, you get 1.3 million, and then that number will grow by 8% at a minimum, guaranteed, for the next 10 years until you decide to start taking income. And then whatever that number is, you're allowed to take a certain percentage of that number depending on when you decide to take it. If it's 10 years, if it's 11 years, if it's 12 years, depending on if you take it on just you, meaning when you pass away it's done, or if you take it on you and your spouse, meaning if you predecease your spouse, and the spouse continues to receive it. There's a certain percentage of that number you'd be able to take into perpetuity. That'd be for another video, but the point is there's some great advantages to planning for these early. So that's the product. Now let's get into the actual strategy. Before just diving into a fixed index annuity or transferring money over, we need to review this situation holistically with the rest of your finances. So here is a very simple way to do that. The first question, of course, you're going to ask is, where is your money now? Because the way that you're going to fund a fixed index annuity will vary depending on the type of assets that you own. For example, if you have money in cash value life insurance, if you have money in a CD that has another 6 months until you can access that money without penalty, those might not be areas where you're going to pull money from to put into an annuity. If you have money in an old 401k and an IRA, that might be something we go for. Well, if you have money in a mutual fund that's taxed as earned or a Roth IRA that's tax-free, we need to consider which of these funds might be best to first roll into an annuity for tax purposes and making sure that everything is working in sync and not against each other. The next question there is there a baseline you would like to guarantee forever? So for example, some people may need $100,000 a year in income. However, they might say, I'm fine with just $75,000 a year being guaranteed forever. Maybe it has that inflation adjustment, maybe it doesn't. But anything above the $75,000, I'm fine with taking a little more risk. Maybe that money's in the stock market, but at least they have identified the number that we want this to be guaranteed. For example, maybe they got that number because $100,000 is the amount that they need to live currently with the lifestyle they're living. However, if things hit the fan, they'd be fine with reducing their lifestyle down to $75,000, so that's the number they want guaranteed. And if someone wasn't as willing to reduce their lifestyle, maybe that number's higher, but that would be the second step, is finding that number. From there, what would make this possible and when? So again, we have all of those accounts. So where's our money? Is it in the cash value life insurance? Is it in 401ks? Is it in Roth IRAs? Where's the money we're going to pull from? So let's say it is from the 401k. The next thing to determine, as we alluded to in the first part, is when should this happen? When are we going to start taking this money? And this is just that calculation of what is that target retirement age in unison with what is that target number. So if the number there is $75,000 that you want guaranteed, do you currently have enough money to be able to fund an annuity to be able to get that $75,000? If not, how much longer would you need to work until you have this amount of money to where you'd be able to hit that baseline? Also, another way to look at this is if you put the amount of money you have now into there, how long would it need to be delayed until it grows to that amount of money to where you can start taking it as income? And there's even guarantees for how that money is going to grow as well, like I mentioned there before. From there, of course, you'd have a much clearer picture of what might make sense to move in, for how long you need to delay it, and then you can know how much you're going to get into perpetuity at that rough date. The last thing to consider here, and I would argue the most important, is why are you doing this? See, the idea with this strategy of guaranteeing your income forever is not necessarily focused on trying to earn the highest rate of return, maximize your gains, and make sure that no matter what, when you pass away, you did everything you could to have the highest amount of money. It's not about that. Instead, what this is about is guaranteeing your income, having your finances sorted, squared away over here, no risk, no unnecessary money in the stock market, so you can focus on the things that matter most to you. Your faith, your family, your kids. You can be at peace. You are optimizing now for your life, your headspace, as opposed to taking unnecessary risks in the stock market and sacrificing energy because of that. If that is a trade-off that you are willing to make that seems enticing to you, then this might be a good strategy to consider. If you are someone who's very concerned with maximizing your dollar and passing on money to heirs and the most you can possibly do, well, this might not be the strategy for you. This is about sorting things, being at peace, so you can focus on the things that matter most. And last but not least, how do we actually implement this strategy? The first is we're going to develop a range for when that income will be taken. So we're kind of building off of that last step there in terms of the when. Maybe we don't know for sure if it's going to be in 5 years or 7 years, but we at least have that range there. Hey, I'm probably going to be able to retire in the next 4 to 8 years. And that way you can know a good length to pick for the surrender period. The next thing is going to be finalizing where the money is coming from. Is it the 401k? Is it the Roth? And from there, you can begin the underwriting and paperwork process. This can be a tedious process, usually isn't that long with annuities, but you are going to have to sit down, fill out paperwork. There's usually not any sort of health underwriting, so it doesn't matter if you're uninsurable, this is still a product that you can use. And then just getting the paperwork to move the funds from wherever they are now over to the insurance company and start the annuity. After you move those funds, now you are just waiting until you take the income. And this isn't a decision you had to make right away, but it's something you'll make later, and that is whether you're going to take this income just for you, it's going to last in perpetuity for however long you live, or if you're going to take it for you and your spouse. That means if you pass away first, the spouse would continue to receive the income into perpetuity. This is a decision that you do not have to make until you're turning the income on. Finally, make a decision, turn on the income, and be at peace. Hopefully this video is helpful. If you'd like to learn about fixed index annuities in much greater detail, click the video on the screen now.